Well, hello, and welcome to Rally FC. That's right, Rally FC, the Ghostwriter podcast on the Flying Cow Network. As always, I am your host, Clay Johnson, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Starting today, we are actually in the third season of Ghostwriter, which, if you've been paying attention and following along, was the final season of Ghostwriter. The third season only lasted for 3 episodes. So I thought I would do something special. And instead of bringing in someone new, I would bring back a few of my favorite guests. So here with us today are returning guests, Rampy and Karen Murphy. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, pip, pip, cheerio.
Doing great.
Are you going to be doing that the whole episode, Zip?
Oh, God, no, I can't do it that long.
Honestly, your accent was, if not a little better, maybe on par with some of the other ones in this episode. I will say, like half of the British cast, because this episode does take place in London, half of the British cast was British. And at least 2 of them, I don't think were.
Which ones?
I don't think the guy who played the kid's dad was British, because he played
Dr. Chilton.
Yeah, Chilton.
In
yeah,
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think he's British. I might be wrong.
Was that him? See, I kept thinking that the whole time.
It was.
Yeah.
I checked.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
not in his
because it wasn't in the credits.
No, and it's not in his IMDb. It was in the very last episode's credits. But yeah.
Okay.
I saw him. I'm
go.
like,
Yeah, Anthony Held or Healed. I don't know exactly how you pronounce that, but I mean, I don't know. Somebody might look him up and tell me, no, he's British, and I'll just look like an idiot, but whatever.
Well, how about if we don't do that then?
It's fine. All right. I mean, he might be Canadian or something. I'm looking it up.
That's nearly
he's
British.
He's American. He's an American character actor. There we go. But yes, like I said, thank you guys so much for coming back and doing this podcast with me. I have to ask, are we good? You guys have now watched this show twice. Are you guys just really good friends, or is this show better than I think sometimes?
We love you, Clay.
All right.
But I'm also,
what she said.
I'm also a little bit outside of the target demographic.
Sure.
I was in college when this thing came out, so
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah, and I was just behind you finishing up high school.
yeah.
sure. Yeah, totally understandable. I mean, there are definitely some episodes that I'm like, I actually like this. This is good. And then there are some episodes that I'm like, yeah, this was a kid's show in the 90s.
But this one, I have to say, I actually enjoyed way more than I did the previous episode.
I mean, honestly, it wouldn't be that hard, because you unfortunately got the original pilot, which is
Oh.
one of
It was rough.
the worst
It was
episodes.
rough.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Still definitely trying to figure stuff out, and yeah, it was definitely rough.
Yeah, but they definitely figured it out by the time they made this episode.
Right.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was nicely paced. There wasn't a whole lot of extraneous, material that is just
Sure.
there to fill time.
Yeah.
It was a pretty tight episode. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
By this point, they really have kind of toned down the educational, asides of let's watch the children write every single letter in this sentence kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, there's still some of that occasionally, they're still making the kids make stupid mistakes so that they can have a lesson.
Mhm.
But for the most part, they're starting, and I think a lot of that is because the kids are getting older. Therefore, they're kind of moving along with, some more story elements rather than just the educational stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go ahead and let's jump right into this episode. This is story arc number 16, A Crime of Two Cities. And the basic premise of this one is Jamal is vacationing with his parents in London. And they just so happen to basically stumble on a mystery, like literally a guy on a bike runs into them and leaves something, and they have a mystery.
That's how most crimes are solved, though.
Yeah, it's true.
True.
Guys on bikes, I mean...
But they end up basically falling into running across a kidnapping plot. And they have to, this is another one of those kind of Columbo style episodes where we know who the guilty party is the whole time. We're just kind of waiting for the kids to catch up. And there's, cracking various codes and, randomly calling people on the telephone and doing basically whatever they can. They end up working with the team, the rest of the team in New York. So, and eventually they end up figuring out what the plot is and how they can stop this kidnapping. But yeah, some very interesting stuff going on. I can tell you this right off the bat. The majority of these episodes, while watching them, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that one. I remember and I, vividly remember watching it the first time. I did not see this episode when I was a kid.
Really?
The first time I saw it at all was when I was trying to decide whether or not to do this show, and I just watched all of the stories, and I was like, what is this? Because I do not know how, but I somehow missed this foray into London, because I can tell you one thing's for sure. Had I seen this episode, I would have remembered Wise Rita. Because that character is just so over the top.
Yeah.
Wise Rita is basically a character that we encounter. We're going to talk about her fashion sense later on, because it's very interesting. But basically, the whole plot revolves around these books. Sophie Madison, they're, I guess for kids and preteens kind of thing. And the whole thing with Wise Rita is she basically believes that her childhood friend, Gloria Brockington Owens, yeah. But basically she believes that her old friend stole her life and wrote down these stories based on her, and she's now rich, and she's like basically believes that she is owed something. I will say, watching it, I was just like, well, it's a fictional character. It's not like she, wrote a real life account and said, this was me or something like that. So I don't know how many legs she has to stand on. If she had written this herself and then Gloria then said she wrote it, that would be plagiarism. But just using you as source material, is not... You got no legs to stand on. And
I have a thought about this, but
Sure.
I'm not going to say it till we get to the final episode, because I was actually like,
sure.
no, maybe Rita has something to say about this.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. We can talk about that in a bit. But yeah, Rita is constantly talking about how. And, a lot of it comes from the fact that Rita doesn't seem to really have a whole lot going on. So, she is basically believes that this plot, because she is planning to kidnap Gloria's son and hold him as ransom, and then at some point reveal that she's really the
person on whom.
Yeah, so Sophie Madison, because she keeps spouting these things that she says will be news headlines, like this one.
Wise Rita reaps her revenge.
In fact, every other line that she says, she's like, "Oh, that would be a good headline," and I'm just like, I don't think the public cares as much as you think they will.
Well, I mean, it is kind of her career is, selling the news, literally.
It's true.
Selling the news.
Yes.
Yeah, because she sells newspapers.
I mean, she's in the news business.
Yeah. Tangentially, but yeah. So we start off the episode with a 2-minute montage of Jamal, and at this point, a random white girl we don't know running through London. I timed it. It is literally over 2 minutes, this montage of them just running through London. And I was just
they
like,
never been
the entire
introduced.
song.
Yeah, it is so long. I was like, why is this montage this long? We got the idea that Jamal has made a new friend and is in London a minute and a half ago. We're good.
Well, but see, I didn't get that.
Oh, really?
It wasn't until they actually started the dialogue,
Okay.
where he was like, "Oh, I'm in London and we're staying at a bed and breakfast and all this stuff," and I'm like, "Oh, that's what's happening."
I thought maybe
I
the whole
haven't
team was
watched
there.
any episode since the original pilot.
Sure.
I have no idea what's happening right now.
So the
So wait a
montage.
minute. Those aren't even his parents, are they? Where's Samuel L. Jackson?
That's right.
Oh,
I'm rooting for that too.
Yeah, because Samuel L. Jackson was only in really like the first 2 or 3 episodes. He was replaced forever ago by the guy who is currently his dad, Dean Irby. His mom's been the same the whole time, although she's only in like 3 episodes total.
Right.
But yeah, no, you're right. I can totally understand why you'd have no clue what's going on because, those parents aren't familiar to you at all. But yeah, I mean, I just the 2-minute montage, and then we get basically the scene of this random bicyclist, running into them and being mad at them.
Right.
And, being...
That at least seems legit. I mean, that seems like a real reaction.
Sure.
I'm going to run you over and then flip you off.
Yeah, absolutely. But, his defensiveness does not keep him from dropping one of his vital envelopes, which, of course, has exactly the clue that we need inside to get into this mystery.
No more, no less.
No.
Just the exact details that the plot needs to reveal at this moment.
Well, and also, like, when we realize, like, the whole rest of the plan, I'm like, what was in the rest of those envelopes that he didn't drop? Because I feel like we got all of it right there in that one little envelope.
It may have been like a 45-point plot to kidnap this kid, and you only saw the most direct path.
Right. They had, steps 1 through 99, and 1 through 3 is what ended up working out. But yeah. So we do meet Becky, who is the young girl that is hanging out with Jamal. I will say there was a moment there right before the bicyclist ran into them, where, Jamal's just taking shots of Becky, and he gets distracted by Ghostwriter because Ghostwriter is, I guess, posing, and Jamal's like, "Ghostwriter, you're not going to show up in this picture." And Becky is like, "Jamal, like, hello, you were flirting with me over here. Come on."
Did you notice the cameo from the 90s Star
Okay.
automatic camera?
I didn't notice
a camera
that
that
one.
you actually No, I'm just saying, like, literally
Oh,
a camera that you push a button on.
Yeah.
As opposed to, all the digital cameras these days. It's
Right.
like, oh, I remember.
Was it
you
one
had
of
to
those
advance
like
film.
disposable cameras? I honestly didn't really notice like what the camera.
I mean, I'm probably completely imagining that I'm hearing him advance the film with that little, click sound. But
I wouldn't be surprised. But
I mean, considering all the other props they use that looked very thrown together.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the laptop.
Oh, yeah. That was an old laptop. But no, you said cameo, and I immediately went to the very next scene because Jamal and Becky go back to the B&B that Becky's parents own and Jamal's parents are staying at. And who just happens to also be staying in this bed and breakfast but Ahmad and Felicia Rashad, which I was like, oh, wow. And you didn't know they were staying there? I mean, I'm sure they are just staying in their room, because, they expect the same reaction that Jamal gives them. Aren't you Ahmad and Felicia Rashad? I love that they basically just poke their heads back in like, yeah, out. They don't even acknowledge him at all. Yeah.
Yeah, they're checking out.
Yeah.
So this is the only time we're going to see them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a random cameo.
Their actual daughter, stays and has like one or two lines of dialogue more with Jamal, and then she leaves. And that's it.
She has a very meta scene with Jamal where Jamal has just recognized her parents, and she stays and she looks at him and she goes, "Wait, aren't you?" And he's like, "What?" And he just like winks at the camera, and she's like, "Never mind." And I'm just like, really? We're gonna be that cute, Ghostwriter?
I mean, they kind of deserve it in season 3. But I've got to think that the reason that we saw Ahmad and Felicia Rashad was because their kid probably watched Ghostwriter.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they're like, well, why don't we just do this as a family? It'll bring a little bit of pizzazz to the episode, and that kid gets to, probably see somebody who she loved as a kid growing up and watching the show.
Right. Well, like I said, this is actually the first episode of season 3, although you can tell because of a few different things that this was actually filmed in the same story block as the last half of season 2.
Interesting.
But like I said, this is the last part of season 3, and it only got 3 episodes because they ran out of funding. But at this time, they're actually getting a lot of media coverage. You've got, Ahmad and Felicia Rashad as, guest appearing. And there was actually a special that they ran on NBC with Katie Couric. She actually did a profile on Ghostwriter and did like a half-hour special on Ghostwriter with Katie Couric. And, then 3 episodes later, the show's over because they don't have funding, which is crazy.
Wow. Well, it is crazy, especially when you consider there's like 5 different donors listed at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same donors that I'm sure most other
and they
PBS
actually
shows
have
had.
corporate sponsorship from Nike.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I do know that this was actually a time.
To London.
Yeah, honestly, it probably wasn't the best way to use their expenses. But yeah, I mean, I do remember this was actually a time when the show was pretty hot. And then I don't know if maybe there were some, mistakes made or, maybe some funds
with
got
their
allocated
Star
the
Wars
wrong
level,
way. I'm sorry?
With their Star Wars level special effects going on, that the budget for each episode must have been astronomical. So, they may have just said, pull the plug. This bad boy is a deal breaker.
Well, and, also we've run into, in previous episodes, we've talked about the fact that these kids are getting older. At this point, Sheldon Turnipseed, who plays Jamal, is 17 years old, playing a 13 or 14-year-old. Now
middle school.
Yeah, now he's actually the oldest kid in the cast. The rest of them are 15, 14, 13. But they've started trying to bring in younger kids to kind of, keep the show young. But those younger kids are, they're not the people that everyone's tuning into. So I'm also wondering if maybe the cast was starting to get restless at this point. Because we'll talk about it at the end of the episode, but this is actually the last episode for one of the main cast, which is crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Getting back into the episode itself. So, Jamal, basically, they have these clues. So he starts working on it with Becky and Sam. At this point, they can't see Ghostwriter, although they will by the end of the second episode. But at this point, they're just helping him, solve the case. I will say one of the first things that they do on this case, which I was like, we did this in the very first episode. You were involved with it, Jamal, yet you're acting like you don't remember any of it. They solve a code, which is actually the same code as the type of code that they solved previously, and he can't figure it out. And I'm just like... He also says that it happened last year, which, like I said, that was like the first episode like 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm like, what's the timeline on this show? Like, it's really kind of messy, especially because, like, literally 2 episodes ago, Tina had her first day in middle school, and suddenly it's summer. I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. But, yeah, so inside the envelope, they find a random phone number. They think it might belong to the guy that ran into them. But when they call it, it actually belongs to the Brockingtons, which at this point they don't know is the name of the author of Sophie Madison. Because there is actually a clue in there that ties into Sophie Madison. I think it says something like the true identity of Sophie Madison will be revealed.
And he's like, who's Sophie Madison?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it's... The books we do find out are, they do have them in the States, but it's really a big British thing. Yeah, I imagine it might be a similar type popularity like a Harry Potter. Not as big, but, started over there and then came over here and, got somewhat of a following. But, yeah, so that's really what's going on with Jamal and them. And during the episode, we also see a scene with the rest of our team in New York. Lenni actually gets Jamal's postcard, which we saw him mail at the beginning of this episode. I don't know, maybe a few days have passed, or maybe post is just really fast.
Well, it's got to be faster than now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One would hope, anyway. But they get
the joy of it all.
Yeah, they get actually a couple of postcards, and the first one is from Jamal. The second one is blank, and Ghostwriter, who has apparently been on this vacation with Jamal, basically randomly calls a rally at Lenni's, and Lenni is like, "Who called a rally at my house?" And everybody shows up. And they realize that Ghostwriter called the rally at Lenni's because he wanted to fill in the blank postcard and let everyone know that he's having an ace time in London, which was great.
I think it was episode 1 that I noticed they were trying to get some new catchphrases going, including the word crisp.
Crisp.
Yes, which, okay, Obviously, I'm from America, but I have spent a little time in London. I have friends. She's Irish, but I have friends from Great Britain. I have never heard anyone use the term crisp in that way. Class, sure, but not crisp.
When I visited London was approximately 6 months after the date that they say it is in the episode.
Okay.
December 13th, 1993. I was there summer 1994.
Wow.
Okay.
So this episode brought back a lot of memories for me.
Yeah.
However, one of those memories was not hearing someone say crisp.
Yes.
Ever.
No, I like that one. I was like, why do they keep saying crisp? We have encountered on this show that they have a very skewed idea of what kids think is cool. Like this.
Ready for one dynamite, dude?
That's not something kids in America say either. So I was wondering if maybe, they, took slang from a different time period in London, or if they just made up their own and said, this sounds right. Yeah.
It's very much Mean Girls. Stop trying to make crisp happen.
Yes, so much. I was just like, doesn't even make sense. I was like,
maybe it was one of their ploys. They're trying to, maybe if we can find that catchphrase and get it out there and all the kids start saying it, then we'll be back in business.
What it really ends up doing, though, is making it seem like they don't know London slang. It really makes it seem like they just made it up. I mean, if I have listeners out there in London and you're like, no, when I was that age at that time period, we said crisp all the time. Fine, let me know. But I was just like, really? I've never heard that.
So to be fair, though, most London slang probably would not be fit for educational TV. I mean, could you imagine Jamal walking around calling people a twat?
No. But like I said, at that time, class was something that they used for the same reason. I don't know why they couldn't have just said class. That's class.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It might sound weird to American ears, but so does crisp. Because it's not even real.
I'm just going to start saying crisp all the time now.
Oh, that's crisp.
Just because.
You know what I
Super
honestly
crisp.
think it is? I think it was somebody coming up with London slang thinking crisp and cool were like counter. It's like, well, we say cool. We'll say they say crisp. That sounds awesome. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, by the end of the episode, they realized that it's not the straightforward code that was used in the original episode. It actually starts off with a code word, zebra or zebra as they pronounce it, and they find that out from Sam, who has read one of the Sophie Madison books that included this code. So already we're discovering that Danny and Rita, I didn't mention Danny, but Danny is her nephew, that is helping her out with this scheme, that most of their scheme involves things that are found in Sophie Madison books, which means that a 10-year-old in London should be able to solve this case. But it's in that clue that they discover that part of the intent is kidnapping. But it also mentions that the kidnapping is to take place in New York City. Now, this is something that I want to bring up because in that first conversation between Rita and Danny, they make it sound like they called Gloria and told her that the tour is now going through London. So basically what they're saying is they just changed her schedule on a whim so that they would be in the... And I'm like, did you set it up with the places that she's supposed to be reading at? Did you set it up with her publicist? Because those types of book tours are not something that you can just change willy-nilly. And, people are going to be like, yeah, sure, come read here.
Aside from the fact that they had Jamal in London and everybody else back in New York, it made no sense to me why they would be trying to orchestrate a kidnapping via newspaper codes throughout across the pond.
It seems unnecessarily complicated. And like I said, like her whole plan doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because you get the feeling that the big thing that she really wants is recognition. But at no point in this plan do we really find out how she's planning to get this recognition, because the kidnapping really all comes down to ransom and money. How does that equate to
And she doesn't even kidnap.
No, she gets her nephew, who apparently lives in New York or is going to New York for this plot. Again, if that's the case, unnecessarily complicated. It makes no sense. I'm like, I like the fact that, yeah, we're dealing with the title of the episode, a crime in two cities, but this isn't the crime that merits that.
If there is an Occam's razor version of this,
yeah, it definitely needed to be simplified. Honestly, there were times when I was like, this is really complicated. Like, honestly, out of all of the mysteries that they've done on this show, this is one of the ones that I actually thought was the hardest to figure out. But I almost think unnecessarily so. It almost feels like they had gotten a note saying, your mysteries you're too easy for the kids. Make them harder. And they did something so convoluted that it's like, not really what we meant.
Agreed.
Yeah. But like I said, beginning in the second episode, basically, at this point, they're discovering that there are clues, like Karen said, in various newspapers. One of them is in London. One of them is in New York. I will say, when they mention look in the mirror on Monday, the fact to me that a British kid didn't immediately, like, if Jamal had been like, does that mean we have to look in a mirror on Monday? Okay, Jamal's being silly and stupid, whatever. But for a British kid to say that and not get that they're talking about your newspaper, I was like, really?
Well, there are lots of different newspapers at this time.
Sure.
Right now, maybe not so much, but at the time, because it's the Mirror, the Guardian, there's like 3 or 4 different
the Sun
newspapers, and some are more tabloid than actual news. So
right. Right. Yeah, I can
kind of forgive it, but I'm not even British, and as soon as they said the Mirror, I thought of her, and I was like, but she sells newspapers. Wait, there's a newspaper called The Mirror.
Sure.
I knew it instantly.
Yeah.
Well, then the other thing, and because I am incredibly cheap, I look at the ad space that they took out, and I'm like, you wasted so much time and money getting like a 2x4 space of this when you could have had it down in 8-point font.
Yeah.
Yeah, like no one is just going to randomly pass by that advertisement and go, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this advertising?
They're the only people who noticed it.
Yeah. I'm thinking, if anything, there are some puzzle people out there that are like, ooh, is this some cool puzzle? And are going to just randomly
stumble
on their, and be like, what is look in the city sun? What is that talking about? That's weird. At least I don't think any of those said anything about kidnapping, although the one in the sun might have. I can't remember. Yeah, I think one of them said like the kidnapping is set. And I'm just like, 12-year-olds figured it out. I'm pretty sure, there are some puzzle masters out there. They're gonna get it. But,
Well, and also, even if there is some random newsstand in New York City that sells the Daily Mirror, they're not going to have Monday's edition on Monday.
No, that's true.
They wouldn't get it until the next day.
At the earliest.
So,
Yeah.
How did the guy in New York get the coded message?
See, that also, like I said, I wasn't sure whether or not he was, like, lived in New York or was going to New York specifically for this or what. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of this is, like I said, unnecessarily complicated and kind of silly. But we have, taking place in the second and third episode, we actually have a side plot, which sometimes the side plot is kind of tied into the main plot. Not so with this one. Like, literally, this side plot could have been in any episode. It has nothing to do with the main plot at all. But the subplot is Tina and Hector are taking an acting class. And Hector is all excited about it. And Tina, as we, have seen in the past, has said that basically she's taking it because she wants to be a director. And she basically just wants to be well-rounded. She wants to know all sides of it. But something that is... I find it really interesting that they decided to do an acting class subplot with the actor who plays Tina, Tran, because if you look at the whole rest of the cast, she is the one that, in my opinion, is the least comfortable with, some of this stuff. She's the quietest, she's the most reserved, she's kind of the most hesitant. She's the least likely to do something off the wall, character, actor, anything. So right. Putting her in a subplot where she's in an acting class is strangely meta to me. Like, I mean, like I said, I'm not saying that she's doing a bad job with what she's given. I think that because they know her tolerance level, they give her the perfect amount for what she's doing, and I think she pulls it off very well. But I just find it very interesting, like I said, to give that character that subplot. Because she reacts as you would expect her to, based on what we see from Tina. She's very much doesn't want to come out of her shell, very much, would prefer to not be pushed into the limelight, specifically says that she's self-conscious. She doesn't want to look like an idiot. And there's a scene, we're going to talk about it later. I'm going to save it because I'm just going to tell you right now, it is my rewind moment. But there are some moments where Tina is made specifically to feel uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's just Tran legitimately reacting to the situation or if she's in character, but it is great. But, this whole, like I said, this subplot really goes through these middle two episodes. And towards the end of the subplot in this episode, she just kind of gets pushed far enough and she leaves. She eventually, after, talking things over a little bit with Lenni and then talking to the acting coach herself, decides to come back and eventually gets to do a scene with Julia Stiles, who is randomly back. She appeared in a previous episode, and I guess they just decided, hey, you're an actor? Want to be in this random acting class scene? Sure. And then we see by the end of it, she's apparently volunteering for everything because the teacher asks for volunteers, and she's like, of course, Tina. And she also gets to do a scene with Hector, which, how did you guys feel about that scene? Because it goes very serious. And
It does.
part of it, I was like, I like knowing this about Hector, but part of it feels really unjustified and unearned.
It's my rewind moment.
Okay, so we can talk about it more later. All right. Yeah. But yeah, so that is what is going on in our subplot.
I actually thought it was interesting because, yeah, I mean, it had little to nothing to do with the actual plot of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I thought watching this instructor basically teach kids how to do improv and acting was actually kind of interesting. And I'm like, if I was a kid, I'd probably take more watching that.
Yeah.
And, some of the things of, oh, is that why I have stage fright? Or is that why I get uncomfortable or, fumble with my words or that kind of stuff? So I thought it was kind of interesting, not because it had any real relevance to the story, but I'm like, hey, if you got to learn something.
Yeah. And
acting's not a bad thing.
And I mean, Zip, you can speak to this. It looked like a legit acting class.
It was, yes, absolutely. It was one of those acting classes that's designed to help you get in touch with your body and your physicality.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable in your own body, as well as to start opening up. Because the whole idea is, like, at first we're just going to do these fun, silly things, but then she actually took it to a place where they could then apply what they've learned and take it a step further.
Yeah.
Which was really
it definitely is an intro basic beginner's acting class, but I've been in those classes. So it felt very, it resonated with me. I was like, yeah, this is real. Because a lot of times you'll see, something that you've done portrayed on a television show and you're like, it's nothing like that. But this didn't feel like that.
No, and the teacher was very good, I thought, actually, in terms of like, she was very kind, but not coddling, and
confrontational when necessary.
Right, but not like, in a way you could see that she was doing that for a reason, as opposed to, oh, she's really mean, trying to pull something out of me.
Yeah, not like I once had an instructor. Now, I never experienced this, but I heard stories about, oh, yeah, if he doesn't like what you do, he'll throw his keys at you. It's like, that sounds helpful. But yeah, so getting back to the main story, like I said, at this point, the team in New York is fully invested. I will say, with a story that has so much going on and is so complicated and so convoluted, there are these moments where it feels like they just stop and they wait. It's like, oh, let's do this thing. Oh, but I've got to do this thing with my parents. And then they just cut the action. And, there are several of those moments. And there was a point at which I was like, I'm really starting to feel these starts and stops. Like it felt very counterproductive to me to ramp up the action and then, oh, but I've got to do this thing with my parents now. Bye.
Right. And it's always followed by, we'll pick this up tomorrow.
Right.
And then they figure out something else, and then, oh, but now I've got to go clean dishes.
Yeah,
I'll go to the library tomorrow.
And there were a couple of times.
How many days are we spending here?
Yes, exactly. And there were a couple of times, I think, when they were first working on the code, where Becky was like, all right, let's figure this out. And Jamal was like, oh, but I've got to do this thing with my parents. And they're like, all right, we'll pick it up tomorrow. I'm like, Becky doesn't have to go anywhere with her parents. Becky can be working on this. Why do we have to stop?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
But there is a point at which when they have decided that they're going to enlist the kids in New York, and Jamal is like, oh, but it's a 5-hour time difference. So it's not even 7 a.m. there. I'll have to wait. And we watch him wait for a little bit. And then when they go to New York, we find out that the girls apparently had a sleepover and had been up all night. And I'm just like, why? Number one, why did you need to show all of that? We have to wait and actually, but then why did you then tell us that them waiting was pointless? Like, it really was just aggravating to me. I was like, why? Why did we have to stop? It makes no sense.
Feels like there's that instead of doing yes and, they were like, oh yeah, well, let me thwart you.
Yes, they kept putting up roadblocks. And I felt like, really what it felt like was, we've got to stop here, because if we keep going, the mystery will be solved too quickly. And I'm like, I feel like some of their roadblocks in the past have, while silly, been at least a little bit more natural than these, well, I'm going to go do this thing with my parents, or we've got to wait for the time difference. But it didn't matter because the girls were up all night anyway.
And again, to be fair, if I went to London with my parents, I would spend pretty much zero time with the bed and breakfast owners' kids. They would be like, you are going to come to Buckingham Palace with us. Then I do not care if you can enjoy this.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Like, you will come with me, sir.
I found that interesting. Number one, that Jamal was sightseeing with this, like I said, at the beginning of the episode, we didn't know who she was, just some random girl. But also, and not her parents, but also I'm like, she's a girl who lives in London. Is this fun to her?
I wouldn't think so.
No.
And I don't know why it felt kind of like they put the responsibility on her. I mean, they keep saying, it was like, oh, I'm so glad I have a new friend, or I have, they keep trying to reiterate how much this is a good friendship that we have, and that's why we're hanging out all the time. But no, it felt like the parents are doing their own thing, and our middle school son has to fend for himself.
Yeah. I mean, because with the exception of the 2 times that Jamal is like, I've got to go do this thing with my parents. Yeah. At the end, we even see that they've made plans without him.
You go see Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, which Sam informs us is the longest running play.
That was very informative of Sam, wasn't it?
It was.
Super informative. That is exactly the kind of trivia that I would assume a 10-year-old should know. Yeah.
But no, I mean, that was the show that they went to see together. But the one that the parents were going to go without Jamal to was apparently
the Royal Shakespeare.
Yeah, the RSC. Yeah. Which I was like, I want to go. I love the RSC.
Well, I did go. I saw Henry V.
Okay.
Nice.
There you go.
In Stratford when I was there.
That was another thing. I do know that the RSC does shows in London, but all of the ones I've ever seen have been in Stratford.
Stratford, right?
I was taken off a little bit for a second there. I was like, but they're they do travel to London. Yeah, okay. I had to remind myself for a second. But yeah, so something that I caught on to when Jamal does eventually write to them to get the team involved once again, Ghostwriter, without asking Lenni, second time in a row, calls a rally at Lenni's. She's in her jammies, and she's just like, why are we calling? And I'm just like, Lenni, I think you need to set some boundaries with Ghostwriter, because Ghostwriter is just calling random rallies at random. I mean, he knows you're awake. That's it. Doesn't ask your permission. Nothing. Just, hey, everybody come meet at Lenni's. Is Lenni okay with this? Need to learn some boundaries, Ghostwriter. That's all I'm saying. Oh, but yeah, I mean, the team catches up quickly, and it's at this point that we see a scene where Ghostwriter has found Wise Rita and Danny and is looking for clues around them. But I don't know, did I miss it? How did Ghostwriter find them in the first place? Because usually
Ghostwriter everywhere?
Yeah, usually it's like, oh, we found this thing and we're looking for it, and that's how he finds the culprits. But he just happened to find them. And I'm like, how did he find them? How did he know these were the people?
And that's the biggest question I had with this particular storyline.
Sure.
Was that, like, okay, I'm willing to go with the fact that Ghostwriter can just be in London, and then as long as there are words for him to read, he can instantly transport to America in New York.
Yeah.
And be there with the team. And then once he's finished there, instantly transport back to London.
Sure. He's traveled in time, cross
these
Atlantic.
are locations.
Yeah.
He's going to locations that he's already familiar with.
Right.
He knows the bed and breakfast because he's been with Jamal the whole time.
Right.
And that's where they stay. He knows where the team hangs out in New York. So he knows where to go. How did he know?
No clue.
The bad guys were sitting on top of this hill with a random bench with a random name on it just because she was writing the revenge thing, the headline.
But this was not something that he was looking for. This was not something that had
I know,
already been
that's what I'm saying.
This was new.
How would he know to go there? That's the logic that I don't understand.
Yeah, I feel like we missed a scene where Jamal sent Ghostwriter to find instances of Wise Rita or something, because they do know that name because of the codes.
Yes.
That's really all we needed, because she was writing her name at that point. But we didn't get that, and it just seems like Ghostwriter found them just by magic.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very loose, but I will say I did not think very deeply about the connection of how Ghostwriter found them. But so I appreciate I appreciate the work that you two have done on this, because you made me think.
Yeah, no, honestly, it just dawned on me all of a sudden. Like, I was just like watching, and I'm like, oh, he's reading stuff around. Wait a second, how did he find them? Like, I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, he did. I mean, when he was there when Jamal was taking pictures, and when he ran into
so maybe he
Danny
has
Winkler, he had the button on.
Sure.
He had the Winkler's Wooden Wonders button, which is actually something that they call back to later on.
Right.
So, and then they see that he's wearing that button in the picture. So,
right.
I mean, I am completely stretching to try to make this make
because
sense,
honestly,
but
it was in that scene where he just randomly found them that he brought back that information. But he was wearing it before, so maybe he just latched onto it and hadn't told Jamal yet. That is something. Like you said, it's a stretch, but it's something. But
because then you have to take the leap that, he knew that the badge was going to be in the picture when it got developed.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
I guess I would chalk it up to like J.K. Rowling level world building, as opposed to George R.R. Martin or James S.A. Corey.
Yeah.
Minus the transphobia.
Hopefully.
This is a very
one
inclusive
can only
show.
hope.
So.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So at the end of this episode, Jamal gets this message from Ghostwriter of the stuff that he's read on them, and in front of everyone, just starts reading it out loud. At this point, he is the only person in the room that can see Ghostwriter. So of course the kids come running, because he randomly starts shouting words. They're like, Where are you seeing this? And they see Ghostwriter. I'm like, I have no problem with Becky and Sam seeing Ghostwriter, but the way they set it up was so ridiculous. I'm like, Jamal, you can't just do that. That's just, you can't, you know how this works.
And they react appropriately. They both freak out, and then Sam's like, Mom, Dad!
Honestly, I love the fact that Sam yelled and ran for his parents, because I'm like, why have we not seen any of the other kids do this? I think Jamal was the closest. He ran and got his sister, because it was her computer that he saw it on originally. But this is the first time we've actually seen somebody run and go get someone to be like, am I crazy? What's going on here? But yeah, I mean, I will say it doesn't help Sam any because it just ends up making him look like an idiot because his parents can't see it, and Becky and Jamal are not helping him out at all.
Nope. They're like, nope.
Honestly,
know what you're talking about.
They're lucky that Sam stuck around. If I had been Sam, I would have just been like, you guys suck, and leave. Like,
as Becky would say, snitches are not crisp.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I say to you, good day, sir.
Good day.
I said good day.
I say good day.
All right. But yeah, so now that we have Becky and Sam are now, I guess, tangentially part of the Ghostwriter team. I do have to wonder, once Jamal leaves, if Ghostwriter's going to keep writing to them or if it's just like, see you guys later. Bye. You know, kind of like, I let you into the
like
secret club for 2 days. Have fun. But,
we'll keep in touch forever.
Friends forever. Yeah. So yeah, at this point, the team in New York is, they're figuring out the code in the City Sun. It's a little different from the one in the Mirror because it's just scrambled instead of an actual code. But really, I mean, there's not a whole lot new that happens in this episode except towards the end. We do get, more confirmations that their plan straight up comes from one of the books. But at some point towards the end of the episode, they encounter Rita and Danny, and they decide to follow them, which I was like, why? But okay. Not really sure why they needed to follow them, especially it's like, oh, I'm going to follow Rita and get her address. Okay.
By myself.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know why we need to do that. Because at this point, they did figure out where Danny lived because of the clue Ghostwriter gave them. They got his last name, Danny Winkler. And so they know where Danny is. I'm like, I don't know why we need more information about their whereabouts or what they're doing. Let's just figure out what they're doing and then send the cops after them. That's all we need at this point. But Becky goes after Rita real easy. She just follows her home, writes down her address, and she leaves. But Sam and Jamal follow Danny. Sam gets left behind because he didn't have a travel card. Which I'm like, you're a kid in London. You don't have...
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So Jamal ends up solo, and he ends up getting basically kidnapped by Danny. We see at the top of the next episode that he is bound and gagged, which...
Yeah.
Was this a little harrowing for you guys? Like...
It was.
Like,
it was like, this just got real.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was the jauntiest gag I've ever seen. It was like this gigantic, lovely bow.
Yeah, this was a double-edged sword for me because initially when I saw this, I was like, "Ooh, this is really dark." But the more that we sat with Jamal bound and gagged, the more I was like, he's like comically bound and gagged. This is
it was
like
a lot of rope.
Yes.
Where did that rope come from?
It's
and
like coiled around his body. It's a little excessive.
Yeah.
And he eventually, because he's bound and gagged, it doesn't matter if he has his Ghostwriter pen or not. He can't use his hands. So he starts writing a message in the dirt with his feet, which I don't know about you guys, but I was really impressed with Jamal's penmanship of his feet. He had very good penmanship for those.
His footmanship.
Feet. Yes.
Footmanship. Yes.
I was just like, wow, that's very legible, Jamal.
I tend to get really focused on very minute things and think, did he have to write 12-inch letters? I mean, if he had to write that out in very small letters, I know it wouldn't have been as obvious for the camera,
right?
But would it have worked as well?
Yeah. But it's around this time that Becky and Sam are a little worried about Jamal. Ghostwriter, I guess, just hasn't been in contact with Jamal for a while, so he, I guess, just goes looking for him, and he finds a couple of clues, and this is actually where we get some of the biggest hints of Ghostwriter's identity, because while Ghostwriter is looking for Jamal, he finds the words that he's written with his feet, help. Eventually, Jamal writes out the entire street name that he passed by, yes. which I think it was like Limehouse Way or something like that. I'm like, that is a very long name that he wrote in a perfect arch with his feet.
Yep.
But, you know, Ghostwriter sees help. He sees Jamal's dropped ID. And so he immediately starts, without anyone asking him immediately starts looking for clues around Jamal to help them figure out where he is. When he settles upon a sign that says Isle of Dogs, Ghostwriter immediately freaks out. And you can see it because he's reading it, and the moment he gets to the word dog, he goes like splotchy and orange. And he brings it back to the kids, tells them he's at the Isle of Dogs, all this stuff. It's not really till later we find out the significance of that. But once Jamal has been saved with, also having the street name and all this kind of stuff, he talks to Ghostwriter, and basically Ghostwriter was like, I was scared because, and he's like, well, why were you scared? And he's like, I have a memory of being chased by dogs. And if you know what we know, I was like, whoa,
This took a dark turn.
Yeah, that's real dark. Real dark. But while all this is happening with Jamal, the team, basically they split the work between themselves and Becky and Sam. They read the remaining books and discover the plan that they're using, which was in one of the books, like I said, that most 12-year-olds in London are reading. I'm not sure. And also, I'm like, as they're describing this plot, they're talking about how Sophie Madison is discovering the plot. I was like, so basically you have put this kidnapping attempt around, I can only assume a failed kidnapping attempt. Real good plan, guys.
I mean, really,
I didn't even think of that.
Gloria Bridgerton really kidnapped her own child.
Yeah, because she wrote the plan. She wrote the plan, but she also wrote that apparently if it was successful, I'm assuming because it's a kid's book, it did turn out well. So she also rescued her child.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
But I'm just like, I mean, using the kidnapping attempt not only in a kid's book, but in a kid's book where I can only assume the plot fails. Seems
exactly
real dumb.
Yeah, because that's what it said it did say that as Sophie was putting it all together and figured out what was
she was watching the guy watch her the kidnapping victim. So
right.
Even if
and
he
she
does
decided
kidnap,
to step in and do something.
Yeah,
they stopped reading.
Yeah, even if he does get the kid, obviously the kid is going to be saved because it's a kid's book. Real bad blueprint. I'm just saying. Don't pick a plan that failed.
Rita Wise is not named so
Wise
because
Rita,
she's very smart.
No, yeah. So they do foil the kidnapping plot as they apparently did in the book. I will say, I wrote down, it's a really good thing that Lieutenant McQuaid just believes these children. Because They don't have a whole
At this
lot.
point, he has to. I mean, there's been how many episodes so far?
Yeah, that's true. There have not. I think,
just as soon as he sees them run into the station, he's like, "All right, where are we going?"
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I will say Lieutenant McQuaid hasn't been in an episode for a while, but there have been several episodes where they call him on the phone and basically are like, "This is what's happening. This is who's doing it," and he's just like, "How do you kids do it?" Well, there's literally a line where Jamal's like, "I don't know how we do it either, Lieutenant." I'm just like, wow. Yeah. Oh yeah. But like I said, I mean that's really the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, was there anything else about the episode specifically that you guys wanted to talk about before we move into the other segments?
I mean, we talked about Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so this does bring me to, so I missed it at the beginning that Wise Rita said she knew this author.
Oh.
I thought she just was assuming that this person had based it off of her life, and that I'm like, well, you're kind of a loony conspiracy theorist. And then you come to find out she's exactly right. She actually did. And she's like, well, but I based it off of her and a bunch of other people, so it's okay.
Yeah,
and I'm
and
like,
myself.
no,
The personality, sure, but the physical traits is what.
Yeah,
is what was specific to
exactly.
Yeah,
Rita.
Especially the moon-shaped
the
birthmark.
moon-shaped birthmark on her neck,
Right?
Yeah,
which was specifically mentioned in the book.
And
yeah,
I'm like,
and is in the animations and stuff. Yeah,
yeah. I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so Rita, you're kind of you're way out there. And then I'm like, no, you may not have a legal leg to stand on, but you're right. You actually were.
Yeah, I mean, and, the way that she explained it, I will say, I'm like, you do kind of sound like you're hemming and hawing around how much inspiration you got from this woman. But at the same time, like I said, it is a fictional portrayal, so it doesn't matter if she was 100% the inspiration, unless you stole her words or passed off her life as yours, in a true sense. There's not a whole lot legally that can really be done about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And why would you want to get revenge from somebody who's basically, I mean, I guess she's profiting off of your traits, but I don't know.
Also, this is another one of those situations where I'm like, have you ever talked to this woman and say, hey, maybe we can go in on something together because I inspired your character? She's, I'm like, communication, people. It really helps.
Yeah, I mean, they had her phone number.
Right.
Yeah.
They could have called her at any point, which, that's another question. Why was the phone number in the envelope?
So the kids could call it.
Find it.
Yeah, well, I know, but that's the only reason.
Yeah, it really is.
No one was planning on calling this woman to tell her what the coded message said, so why was it in there?
I will say, I think that was part of the scene where they said that they had called her and told her that the book tour had been changed, which once again makes no sense. You can't just change a book tour without actually booking new locations.
Yeah.
Doesn't work like that. But, yeah.
Yeah, but 12-year-olds wouldn't know that.
No, it's true. All right. Well, it is time for, honestly, one of my favorite parts of the show. It is time for Ghostwriter Fashion. Like I say, every episode, this show took place in the 90s. And 90s fashion was interesting. So we like to, I just, take some clips from the show and we talk about the various fashion choices that they have made. And as always, this segment started as an homage to Lenni and her hats. As it went on, she wore fewer hats, so we had to expand it. But as a tribute to that, we always start off the segment with Lenni's hats. So, and as always, you can follow along with this segment on our Instagram page. It is just the Flying Cow Pod on Instagram. Feel free to look that up and follow along as we discuss these photos. So, this first one that we've got, I actually have two photos of this because I had to talk about this hat, and we'll talk about the outfit in just a second. This hat is so interesting. Like, the closest thing I could come up with that it reminded me of, it kind of reminds me of the old, like, Jughead hat. I mean, less crown-like, but very similar. It's got that definite, like, brim on it and then a dome inside. It's I don't know if you guys can see from your vantage point, but it's got on the brim these like colorful shapes. It's very interesting.
It is.
Are those shapes, or is this some kind of plaid pattern? Or I don't know.
I mean, from what I see, it looks like I see like a blue square and I think a red like heart, and a red circle.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a plaid or a tartan, like a very muted tartan.
Sure.
Right.
But that's probably putting way too much thought into it.
Well, and honestly, I think that might actually look better. Like, this is just kind of mystifying to me.
The shape of the hat itself is not flattering.
No, it's really not. And there was a picture I had snapped where she was bending down, and the hat, it almost made it look like she had horns. The way the brim sits. So I was just like, oh, that's weird. But yeah, no, not really flattering. Very as we said, mystifying and
I don't
mystifying.
think I've ever seen any hat like that.
Yeah.
Super 90s though. It reminds me a little bit of Six from Blossom.
Yes. Honestly, there are a lot of Blossom hats in this episode. We're going to talk about those in a second. But speaking of odd choices, we have to talk about this outfit because it is literally a patchwork dress. Like, we'll talk in a little bit about
Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah,
a little bit like that.
Yeah,
it reminded me. And this is not the only outfit that does this, that reminds me of an outfit in Doctor Who. It looks a little bit like the Sixth Doctor's jacket. Not as loud and eye bleeding.
It's not as crisp.
Yes. But
crisp.
Not nearly as crisp. But it literally, I mean, like, the skirt looks like it's just like a green skirt. But the top part, like the top and the arms are literally just patched together. And it's not even like they're all like different colors. Like this one on her shoulder is red and white striped. And then she's got like a solid blue shoulder. And then, a green patch. And then, her arms, she's just got purple, blue, gray. It's all over the place.
I think it's the stripes that bother me the most.
Yes, because it's
there's nothing else like it anywhere else on the blouse.
No other patterns. There's no other like dots or any sort of, everything else is a solid color. And there's that one striped bit that's just right in your face.
They actually needed it though, because I said this at the very beginning. Through all 4 episodes, it was a parade of bizarre stripes. Like, all of the clothing was bizarrely striped. It wasn't like, colors of Benetton stripes. It was like crazy circus stripes. And I defy anybody to not go back through these episodes and look at the obscene amount of 90s stripage going on in the costume department.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, honestly, I didn't pull a lot of those photos because that's just what they wear. And it just didn't seem odd to me. I know that might sound weird, but I was just like, that's what they always wear.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the next photo. Okay, so this is definitely like a couple episodes back. Lenni got to make her own music video, and this very much looks like her rock star or even grunge / look. She's basically she's wearing like can't tell what color that skirt is, but she's wearing like a skirt and then like a just a plain blue top and then a really nice leather jacket on top of that. And then she's got her, knockoff Kangol hat.
Did they ever establish how Lenni has her own apartment and is able to afford all of these stylish fashions?
They really just keep dancing around that. They keep mentioning Dad in episodes he's not in. I guess just to calm the fears of the parents and the audience. She does have a dad. She really does. I
remember seeing him once.
Yeah. In fact, they replaced him a couple of episodes ago. Randomly, Dad was just played by a new guy. But this... I joked that she fired old Dad and brought this new guy in, but he doesn't seem to be working out all that well either, because he's only been in that one episode. We haven't seen him since then.
Wow.
Yeah. But we do get, I think this is the first time I've included a picture with Lieutenant McQuaid. One of the last appearances he'll make in the show. And, then we have... Gabby, she's wearing this like white jacket or whatever. Underneath that, though, that yellow hoodie, there were a couple of shots where it looked like a raincoat. Yeah,
it's rather a large hood.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like a cowl.
Yeah. I mean, it's the 90s, so all of these kids are wearing things 3 sizes too big for them. But, yeah, it's definitely large. All right, let's move on to the next photo. All right, I just included this real quick. This is the cover of one of the Sophie Madison books, and I wanted to clip this out because I have never seen a drawing of a child that made them look more British. Like, you look at this kid and you're like,
40.
That kid is British.
Right.
Yeah. Like, there's no mistaking where that kid is from.
Yeah.
Or as I think I heard Zip say, is she a child?
Yeah. She looks very mature to me.
She kind of looks like Lisa Kudrow.
Kind of.
I mean, definitely the style sense, I can definitely see that. Very Phoebe.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Okay, so this is Danny and Wise Rita. I had to clip this out because I mean, I don't know if you guys know much about Doctor Who, but is it just me, or does Wise Rita look like if the 4th Doctor was a woman?
She looks like if all the doctors meshed their outfits together.
Yeah.
Like, this is a person that wants to be noticed. This is
honestly
so loud.
I thought she looked like Lenni, about 40 years older.
she is Lenni's style icon.
Yep.
Who wore it better?
Yeah. And then Danny was, he was the henchman, but he was very goofy, and this is just kind of a shot of that.
Yeah, that facial expression just sums up his whole character.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I had to include this, and I'm going to show you a few pictures in a row because, I don't know, is this just the official hat of London? Because...
Hat pins.
not only are all three of these children wearing it, but this is the same hat that Wise Rita was wearing. And these are very much those Blossom hats we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Here we have Becky wearing one. Sam gets in on the action, and even Jamal. I mean, obviously, Sam and Jamal, this takes place during one of their, I think this was only like a minute or so, but another one of their random montages in London
Right.
of just being kids and having fun. They did 2 of these, all in the first episode, and I was like, wow. Were we just really short on time in the first episode?
Yeah. Stretch it. Stretch it.
Well, no, they had, I mean, those were original songs that they got somebody to make for this show. So
Yeah.
got to play the whole thing. It even specifically talks about the places they're visiting in London.
Yeah. I will say though, this shot of Becky is the shot where she sees him talking to Ghostwriter and is like, "Why is he not paying attention to me right now?"
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I had to pull this out because I don't usually say hardly anything about Jamal's wardrobe, mostly because even if it's odd looking, he looks good in it. So what can you really say? But number one, the shirt that he is currently wearing, I would say, I think it was early 2020. I work in the school system, or at least I used to. I now work online and talk to children that way. But I went to a class, and there was a kid in that class that was wearing that shirt, but with a gold chain.
Nice.
And there was something about it that I was like, that shouldn't work, but somehow it does. But I will say, I wish Jamal had gone for the gold chain instead of this ugly red and white vest, because the shirt looks, I mean, it's very 90s, but it looks good.
It's very 90s.
But that vest, I'm like, why are you wearing that vest? It makes no sense. And this is what he wears to meet Felicia and Ahmad Rashad. I'm just saying, no wonder they didn't come back and say hello. They said, look at that vest. Let's go home.
Again, I think that we are starting to see the edges fray on the astronomical costs of the special effects, because so far they're just taking wardrobe and they're patching together patchwork clothes for kids. They're just throwing random vests over things and calling it a new outfit, and then they're just putting hats on so that they don't have to do hair.
Yeah. I mean,
Fair enough. Yeah.
I will say though, they could have saved some money just by not making him wear this vest. He didn't need it. Like
Some
I said,
money, save some pride.
Yeah, the shirt worked without it. He didn't need the vest. That's all I'm gonna say. All right. I think okay. All right. We'll talk about this one in a second. Okay. So, let us go ahead and move into our last couple of segments. First of all, who are you guys' top suspect? This would be the person in the episode that was either your favorite or that you thought that did the best job, stuck out to you for one reason or another, whatever criteria you want to use. So we'll start, Karen, we'll start with you. Who was your top suspect?
I thought that some of the kids actually did a pretty good job overall, but
Yeah.
honestly, I really enjoyed the acting teacher. I kind of thought that the couple episodes that she was in, she was pretty credible, and frankly, I sat there and thought I would have had fun in that class.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was a credible class. I was actually impressed that they actually showed what felt like a real acting class. Like I almost was like, I almost feel like they're actually just doing this acting class and they're just letting the cameras stay. Like it felt that credible.
Well, maybe they were casting the next Gabby at that point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But
sorry.
No, you're fine. Zip. What about you? Who was your top suspect?
Actually, and I'm sure as you well remember from watching the original pilot episode that I hate children actors.
Yeah.
And I was not real thrilled with, some of the performances given in that episode. However, I think with some age came some maturity and came some, actual chops started showing in this episode. But the one that impressed me the most, honestly, was Sam, the little brother.
Yeah, I meant to look him up because his voice sounded really familiar. And I was like, I would not be surprised if I had heard him in an audio drama or something.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's there are two specific reasons why I chose him. One was just because I thought he was very naturalistic in his performance.
Sure.
But also, they didn't make him just the annoying little brother, which for, as far as children's shows go, that's usually, like in the first episode, Jamal's sister, was that she was in that episode, wasn't she? Or am I misremembering?
Jamal's sister. Oh, I can't remember if she was in that episode or not. I mean, Jamal's sister would have been older.
For some reason, I keep thinking that she was, but she was meant to be sort of like the sassy, annoying sibling kind of thing.
Alex's sister, Gabby.
Oh, I thought it was different. Maybe I'm thinking of something different. I don't know. I've had beer since then. Anyway, maybe I'm just thinking of something else. But anyway, usually in programs like that, when you have a younger sibling, they're meant to be the snotty, sassy, I'm just here to annoy you kind of thing. And Sam was the complete opposite of that. Like when he first came in, he had just come from his football practice, which we call soccer. And, at first I was like, oh, he's going to be the little kid who is just there to be a pain in his sister's side. But no, once they actually let him into what was going on, that they were trying to solve this case, he immediately jumped in, both feet, like, I will help you in any way I can. And he actually helped solve some of the clues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. It was a nice change of pace.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he, like I said, he was pretty good. I mean, I just looked him up. I can't find if he did much after this, but his voice sounded really familiar to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for mine, I'm going to hold off on my top suspect for my rewind moment because it works together. But I will say that my honorable mention is going to be Maytiana Morales as Gabby because as Karen recently just let slip, it's fine. This is her last episode as Gabby. For one reason or another, she left the show after this. This is one of the reasons I said that it's kind of obvious that this was filmed as part of the season 2 production block, because in the very next episode, we will have a new Gabby. And I've said several times, Gabby is one of my favorite characters on the show, one of my favorite parts of the show. And so not looking forward to seeing episodes without her. And, she always added, she wasn't in a lot of this episode. That was kind of, unfortunately, something that started happening, might actually be one of the reasons that she chose not to continue, because they started doing more episodes in the middle school, and she was the only original cast member and one of only 2 cast members that were not part of the middle school. So she got used less. which is unfortunate because she was great in whatever she was put in. But like I said, this is her last episode, so shout out to her. She was great. But like I said, I will hold off on my real top suspect until we get into our rewind moments. This is the moment in the show that either was your favorite or caused you to just say, what? Or maybe literally had to rewind it. So Karen, we'll go ahead and start with you again.
No, don't start with me.
Oh, no, don't start with you? Okay, Zip, I know you've got a good one, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go first.
It's the last time that we see the acting class, and Tina has now put herself full force into this class and is allowing herself to open up and experience all these things, and is growing as a character, which is always lovely to see. Mm-hmm. And so the final scene that she's involved with is with what's his name? Hector. And they are given the task of Tina is going to be a genie, mm-hmm. and Hector is going to be the person who finds the lamp.
Yes. And
so they start acting it out. And Hector rubs the lamp and the genie appears, and they start having this dialogue, this back and forth dialogue, which is actually quite comical. It's nice where like she gives some ridiculous name as, I am blah, 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 whatever, the genie. And he's like, you want to try that name again? Yeah. It's like a genie only ever says her name once.
Yeah.
That's
a great line.
Fun. That's a great line. And so she's like, fine, you get 3 wishes. And so he wishes for all the money in the world. And she's like, you sure? That's a lot of money. Yeah. And, so she showers all the money on him, and he's like taking a bath in it and sticking it in his pockets. And then the second one is, I want a huge house for me and my mother. And she's like, poof, there it is. And like I said, it's just this light comical banter. And then she asks what his third wish is. And out of nowhere, I would like to see my father at least once. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, what? and Tina is taken by surprise too. She's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And then he explains how his father walked out on them, and he's never seen his father, and he wants to have it like turns into this overly dramatic moment of where I just want to see him one time so I can tell him how much I don't need him in my life, one of those kind of moments. Yeah. I'm like, dude, the time or place. Theater is not therapy. No.
Yes, that is what I was like, this feels like a therapy session. And like I said, I like knowing this about this character, but it felt really out, like you said, out of nowhere and kind of unearned.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, I agree with you that there's nothing wrong with learning this about the character.
No. Or
having this reveal at some other moment where it's appropriate to the storyline.
Right.
And not this, which is a subplot, which is focused on Tina, not Hector. This is Tina's story. This is her character development. And this comes out of nowhere. And even Tina is like one of the best acting moments, honestly, I think, in the entire show.
Yeah.
Is this moment. Tina's response is legit.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
she's so sorry.
Yeah, in that moment, like, I wasn't sure, like, the way that she played that, I was like, I couldn't tell if she was, because when he asked to see his father, she starts playing his father.
Yeah.
And the way she delivered that, I wasn't completely sure if she was saying that as his dad or if she was breaking. And I was like, that's pretty good. Yeah, exactly. It's up to interpretation. Yeah.
I mean, It's the one thing that, I used to do high school and junior high acting, and that's about as far as it ever got.
Yeah.
Because I can ham it up with the best of them, but that authenticity of like actually, of portraying emotions that are not mine, but that are somebody else's character, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And I think you're right, Zip, that she did an amazing job bringing some really authentic emotion to this. And Hector did actually a fine job too, although it was, the whole scene was kind of written to cause a point.
It was just it was heavy-handed. Yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
And I mean, I will say, I feel like part of that may have been the writers trying to get people to empathize with Hector, because up to this point, they haven't really known where to gauge him. He is, first of all, the actor is actually the same age as the older actors in the cast. Mm-hmm. But he's playing the youngest member of the team. So they've really struggled, setting his age, making him say kind of juvenile things. And it's like, okay, are you 10 or are you 5? I don't really, well, actually he's 15. So, yeah. So, and I think this was an attempt from the writers to get people to, empathize with him. Mm-hmm. But like you said, it came at the expense of Tina's scene, but kudos to Tina, she won it back. And honestly, that works into mine, because my top suspect, as well as my rewind moment, is Tina in this class. Because, I just felt like this whole class, like I said, I found it really kind of meta that they were putting this character in this class, but I think that it really did her a lot of favor. It really, was kind of a showcase for her. But the scene that got me the most was kind of this introduction to, Tina, you're not going to like this. Because when they come into the class, Tina is the only person writing notes. And, she makes it very clear that she's not interested in acting. That's not her thing. But, she's taking notes, and everybody else is just listening to the teacher, and the teacher walks up while she's taking notes. And she is just giving this speech about, she's like, what makes stories interesting? And she's like, it's conflict, one person wants something, somebody else wants something else. They clash. Conflict. That's what makes a story interesting. So she decides to illustrate this using the least comfortable person in the class, which honestly is something that an acting teacher might do just to see, is this something you want to do? Because this is where we're going to go. She walks up to Tina and she's like, oh, is that your pen? She's like, yeah. She's like, it's really nice. I want it. And she just takes it from her. And Tina is just like she does not know how to react to this situation.
Just deer in headlights, just frozen
at all. She is, and they play it up a little bit, and finally the teacher is like, I'm just kidding. Here's your pen. Thank you very much. This is an object lesson about conflict. And she's like, I'm very sorry. She hands it to Tina, and Tina goes, that's all right. But her eyes in this photo says, I am not all right. Tina is not all right with this. Yeah, that's the last photo on the Instagram. I was like, that face is like, literally when I was watching this, the moment that scene happened, I, number one, busted out laughing. But I also rewound it because I was like, Tina is not okay. She is not okay with this. I was like,
Nope.
that was just a great bit of reacting from Tramon Tran. So, the Tina, there we go. So Karen, you've had some time to think.
I did,
Yes,
and I did not go deep on this at all.
it's fine.
I have two rewind moments. One of them stopped me dead in my tracks in the middle of the 90s when I saw that they were using a rotary phone.
Sure.
I'm like, why are they using a rotary phone in the 90s? I mean, granted, maybe that's what they do in Great Britain. I don't know. I don't know if those are still in vogue, but that shocked me a little bit. And then
I will say my family had a rotary phone in the 90s. We grew up in Arkansas, but
I mean, you have a rotary phone that's been around forever that you've just not replaced with something new. But the other thing, and again, it's just a prop that was jarring. They kept talking about Redbeard. And then you see, I don't even know what to call the thing that they put on this guy's face.
It was
and
so
called
bad.
it a red beard. It was like
It wasn't even red.
wig curtain. No, it was terrifying.
It was real bad.
Like an old janitor's mop that they just cut the bristles off of and glued it to his face.
It was so again, R.I.P. the prop budget for the show.
I don't know if they
Seems to be
ever
going way
had
downhill.
one, to be honest.
That's probably fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, not quite as deep.
No, it's fine. It's fine. All right. All right. Well, normally this would be the time where I ask you guys what you might say to Ghostwriter or who you think Ghostwriter is, but because you guys have already been on this show, we've already done that. If you missed that episode, in fact, if this is your first time listening, go back and listen to previous episodes because things are about to change. And just after that, I would ask if you guys want to know who Ghostwriter is. Well, once again, you've been on the show. You already know that. But there is someone very important, or actually, hopefully several, at least 20 someones that are very important that do not know the identity of Ghostwriter, and that is you, the audience. Because as I have done this show in the past, every time I would tell my guest who Ghostwriter was, I would always blurb it out. You wouldn't hear it, but you would hear how the guests have reacted to it. Well, starting with this episode till the end, the last 3 episodes, I am going to reveal the identity of Ghostwriter, and then we are going to just have a conversation about what we think about that, how we think it works or doesn't work, or we're just gonna kind of go briefly in depth on this. So, with no further ado, Ghostwriter producer and writer Kermit Frazier revealed in a 2010 interview that Ghostwriter was the ghost of a runaway slave during the American Civil War. He taught other slaves how to read and write and was killed by slave catchers and their dogs. So, as this is the episode where that hint was dropped about Ghostwriter basically being afraid of dogs because he was apparently at least partially mauled by dogs as he was dying. Real dark for one.
Dark.
Yeah, I mean, I even mentioned it when we talked about it in the episode. Knowing what we knew, that moment, I mean, for somebody that didn't know that moment, oh, he's afraid of dogs? That's weird. But when you know, that's real dark. I will say I did have a guest that watched the show as a kid, and when she watched this episode, figured it out. How, I don't know, but she did. But what do you guys think about this? Putting into context that this was a show, a kids show for kids in the 90s. What do we think about this backstory for Ghostwriter?
So I remember the first time that I was on,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember talking about the fact that I felt really bad for the writers because you know that they probably had more aspirations than writing this show and this dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
However, I love the idea and the concept. I just think that where they ended up putting it is kind of like, putting an abuse story into Blue's Clues. It's just, it's super huge and heavy. At the same time, you know what? The world is filled with stories that kids are going to hear about. So it's not the story is too heavy for kids because it's history, and I think it should be known.
Yeah.
I think it's a light toned show
For the most
that
part.
then introduces a very heavy subject, and it's not the first show that is aimed for family or aimed for kids that has done that, the very special episodes. So it's not like that's unheard of.
No.
But it is a little bit jarring.
Sure.
I'm not really overthinking it. I frankly wish that the entire story would have been about stories like this.
Sure.
And let the kids deal with not solving riddles and clues and ciphers,
Right.
but dealing with harder issues.
Well, Karen, you were actually on when they dealt with PTSD.
Yeah.
So, we have seen this show deal with tough topics and do them well. I have also seen them deal with tough topics not very well. The last time that they dealt with racism, the boy Rob was called a white boy, and he asked Jamal about it. That was an awkward conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was set up in the first episode that this would be something that they would drop hints about throughout. But I understand with the tone that they ended up setting, I understand why they didn't keep dropping these hints, but I feel like had they been dropping these smaller hints throughout, we would have gotten more used to it, maybe.
Yeah.
But I do think that's a big reason why they never ended up revealing it, because I don't know that they had been approaching it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because never at any point in either of the episodes, even the original pilot episode, did I feel that the point was trying to figure out who Ghostwriter may have been.
Yeah,
when
no, they
were
dropped
alive.
it real quick.
It was just sort of there's Ghostwriter saving the day again,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like there was no emotional attachment to Ghostwriter, so why would they care about his history? He never brought it up because, as we found out now,
He didn't remember.
with only 2 episodes to go before the show is officially over,
Yeah.
Right.
that he finally remembered something about his life, which would have been 200 years before this show happened. No wonder he forgot.
Right?
So, yeah, I think that's always one of the toughest issues with any show, especially for the writers, when you're trying to figure out what is the story we're trying to tell and what is the tone in which we need to tell that story. And, there's lots of shows that can take a full season, a full 2 seasons even,
To figure it
to
out.
come up with that.
Yeah.
To figure all of that out. And once they do, then, man, it can take off, or it's like, oh, nope, we chose poorly, we've been canceled. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it just seems like, with not releasing a huge reveal like this one until now, they were so focused on setting the tone for the Crusades, or I said Caped Crusader, and I don't know why we're not talking about him. But these adventures that the kids get themselves into, and not really, well, we're gonna figure this out eventually.
Right.
It never felt like that was the point to begin with. It was just, Ghostwriter is the what's the Hitchcock term?
It's a MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was the MacGuffin. We just expect him to be there and help us out when we need him to, but other than that, we're not going to explain it.
Yeah. I mean, I have mentioned there was a point at which I think they realized that Ghostwriter had become more of a tool than a character. And so there were episodes here and there where where he got tired, where he had difficulty doing things. They started giving him more, feelings. And, honestly, that was one of the things about the character of Gabby. Gabby was always the character that if something happened to Ghostwriter, the rest of the team might be like, oh, it's great we have this information. Gabby was the first person to be like, Ghostwriter, are you okay? She hugged him 3 times. She made him a word nest. All of these different things. You had a character on the show that was trying to personalize Ghostwriter, but it wasn't necessarily consistent. They'd do that kind of stuff in one episode, and then the next episode they might use him a bit more as a tool or an afterthought. So in the grand scheme of the show, it does kind of seem like they definitely weren't at least consistent in what they wanted to do with Ghostwriter. But I will say, I don't know, it feels to me like maybe this premise was just a little ahead of its time. Honestly, I would love to see them. I mean, they have brought back Ghostwriter in 2 other incarnations, none of them anywhere close to this style of story. I haven't seen either one of them, but just the things that I've read. But I honestly would love to see them revisit this version of Ghostwriter now. Even, revisit, the kids you can get and maybe do the reveal, have them figure out who Ghostwriter is. I feel like now would be the time that this story would land.
And I think the best way to do that is shift the focus on literature as far as like writing and words and grammar and things like that, to shift it towards a more historical bent.
Yeah.
So that whatever cases they may be working on, they have to look to some sort of historical significance in order to understand where we're going, something along those lines. And then that's how you work his storyline in, and by just adding a little clue here and there and more until then that becomes, if you're only going to have 3 seasons, that 3rd season, that's when you start hitting the storyline.
Yeah.
Well, and if they did it well, they would have had far more clues and hints that after you find out, you would go back and rewatch and think it was there all along.
Yeah.
All along, exactly.
Yeah, it was so subtle. Yeah.
Yeah. It does kind of surprise me because we've talked about how kind of different this show was for the time for being as self-referential as it was. But the one place where that really would have helped, dropping clues about Ghostwriter, they didn't do.
Better off for storytelling that kind of hit those notes back in that time.
Yeah.
Happy Days was fun, but it really wasn't very fulfilling.
No. Not even on a very special episode.
No.
Oh, no. Well, and I will say, Jack and I just covered the very special episode of Ghostwriter, and they pretty much whiffed it. It was their drug episode. Not good.
Oh, no.
Yeah. As you can
Drugs are
imagine, the root of all evil was pot. So.
The wacky tobacco.
Oh, yeah. That evil
That's
weed.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well,
The devil's lettuce.
then let us go ahead. Now is the time when I give people the opportunity to get into contact with the podcast if they would like to. I am on Twitter, Instagram. You can email me. All at the Flying Cow Pod. That's my Twitter and Instagram. You can email at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. You can even contact me on Facebook. Let us know what you think, what you thought about this episode. Is crisp something that they say in Britain? What do you think about this this reveal about Ghostwriter? Just let us know what you're thinking, and we'd love to interact with you. But before we go, I want to give you guys the opportunity, Zip and Karen, if there is anything that you would like to share yourselves, or anything that you are enjoying in pop culture that you would like people to know about, and as always, a bonus if it uplifts the voices of women or people of color. I can go first. You guys can take a second to think about it. You know, I usually like to promote a television show or a movie. I unfortunately have not been able to watch a whole lot because I've been prepping a lot of upcoming projects actually for the podcast. But because I am on a podcast, I would like to promote a podcast. I'm sure if it's something that you're interested in, you'd know about it, but just in case, you never know. The new season of Levar Burton Reads has just started. And as any child that grew up watching Reading Rainbow, having LeVar Burton read books to you is just kind of awesome. So basically, every week, and you know, he does it in seasons, so he'll be on for a couple of weeks and then he'll take a couple weeks off, be on for a couple of weeks, take a couple of weeks off. So it's kind of like a nice little story time intermittently. And he just basically reads various short stories. A lot of them actually profile, people of color, people of different cultures and descents. And he reads a lot of science fiction because that's what he's interested in. But it's always very interesting stuff. The one he just did last week, honestly, it was like one of my favorite ones that I've heard him do. It was called The Silver Door Diner. It was basically about this server at a diner that encounters a person that is from outside of time and is telling them that the world is going to end. And they're really just there because they like their pie and conversation. And it's just this really interesting, dissection of humanity and what it means and all that kind of good. It was a really good story. So yeah, if you like short stories and you like LeVar Burton, which who doesn't, check out LeVar Burton Reads. Really good stuff. So do you guys have anything you would like to share?
There is a movie that was recently released on Hulu.
Okay.
And it is called Derek DelGaudio's In and of Itself. This was a one-man show that was produced off-Broadway in New York, ran for about a year and a half. It was directed by Frank Oz, both the stage version and the film of it.
Wow.
And that's exactly what the movie is. It is just a filmed version of the stage show.
Wow.
With live audience. And executive produced by Stephen Colbert.
Nice.
But Derek DelGaudio, I'm not quite sure how to classify him. I wouldn't say he's a magician. I wouldn't say he's an illusionist, maybe a mentalist,
Mm-hmm.
something along those lines. But it's about an hour and a half long. It's like I said, a one-man show. It does have audience interaction within the show, and it is basically his journey of self-reflection to understand the answer to the question, who am I? And he takes the audience on the journey with him. So not only do they learn about him, but one of the things that he does with the audience is that before the performance started, there's a giant wall in the back of the theater, and it has cards that say, I am, and then some sort of descriptive term on the bottom of the card. So I am a leader. I am a caretaker. I am a ninja. I am, I'm a unicorn. Sure. I am, and the audience member selects one that they think best represents them. They are then collected and stacked up on the desk on stage. And then he comes over throughout the performance and actually pulls some of them and asks to interact with those people or to stand up and recognize those people. And it's just sort of a way of bringing out their own reflection, their inner reflection of who they are. It's just such a wonderful show. And, in these days when there is no live theater really to go enjoy, it's nice to see this performance of when there was live theater and to see it executed so brilliantly. It's a wonderful piece. It's very emotional at times as well. So I bring your hanky, but I would say seek that out if you have Hulu.
Cool. Awesome. Karen, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Every time that I've done a podcast with you, we kind of talk a little bit about the media that I've been consuming in general. And it is varied and broad. So everything from the latest season of The Expanse, which I thought was pretty great, sure. Including some of the things that have happened behind the scenes, the decisions that the authors have made going forward, but also watching the season of Lovecraft Country and then reading the book Lovecraft Country was wonderful. Both of those were worthy additions to this year and last year. And then the last thing was kind of born out of the desperation of being unemployed during the pandemic. And I picked up Duolingo and am currently learning Spanish and to a lesser degree Swedish and Arabic, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
The whole thing is really great. And if you miss people, and you especially miss people of different cultures who you don't get to necessarily see or talk to, just hearing new words and language and appreciating it, and then going and seeking out children's Spanish audiobooks so that I can understand on a very basic level things. I'm like, this is kind of where I want to be, but so in a long rambly way, that is what I've been doing with my life.
Nice. All right, well, thank you guys once again for coming on to the podcast and talking about this weird show that you knew nothing about before I asked you to do it. But this is, as always, has been a lot of fun.
It was crisp.
Yeah, crisp. Very crisp. Absolutely. All right. Well, next time, be sure to tune in to hear us talk about an episode that features a new Gabby. She finds a bird. It's called 4 Days of the Cockatoo. They get real silly from here on, I'm just going to say.
Gabby finds a bird.
Yes. Gabby finds a bird. pretty bird. All right. Well, but like I said, until then, Ghostwriter out.